Let's continue the discussion now because joining us is Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su, joining from Washington. Secretary, great to speak with you again today. I want to talk about the response rate. We were just having that conversation with Mike McKee. So just how low was the response rate, of course, in the wake of Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and when would you expect it to pick back up?
Yeah, so the overall picture of this economy remains one of strong, steady, stable growth. We have seen positive job growth every single month under this administration. And as you noted, there were a couple of big factors that make this last month an anomaly. There were the devastating hurricanes, which meant that there were jobs that people, businesses that were closed. We saw this because the federal government was on the ground working with state and local officials to do everything from the search and rescue to reopening roads to making sure people had access to water and to power. And so those same businesses that might have ramped up in the last month on hiring were not doing so. At the same time, the other big indicators are still really stable. Unemployment rate remains at 4.1%. We've said this again and again, that most predictors were that that number could not go down to that for many, many years after the pandemic, and it's been steadily at near or below 4% for a very long time. GDP growth is up too. Wages continue to be up. Wages have outpaced inflation for 17 months straight, and so there are a couple factors that certainly we expected that they would affect the numbers for last month's report.
Well, Secretary, if we look at what wasn't as impacted by some of these effects that we're talking about on the weather, I mean, we still had big downward revisions to the September and August payrolls report. Obviously, this is going to be a bit of a noisy report. And looking ahead, I mean, you take a look to October or what we're going to get the next time around. How big would we expect those revisions to be?
Yeah, again, there were anomalous situations that affected this report, but even with those revisions in the prior couple months, the 3-month average, and we often look at averages because we don't want to make too much out of any one month. As you said, some of them can be noisy. The 3-month average for the prior 3 months is still 148,000 jobs grown in the economy. And again, if you look at overall indicators, people have been predicting a downturn for a long time in this economy, and it just has not. That's not what's happened, and that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because of steady leadership and again the investments that we've made in America in manufacturing and construction and clean energy are having an effect, and that is one of the key reasons for the strength of the economy that we've had. Those investments will continue, and they are, that's part of the impact that we've seen over the last really 3.5 years.
The administration has guided that this would be a noisy report already, and of course, this morning was indeed quite noisy. I want to go to the unemployment rate because one reason it did hold steady was the decrease in the labor force participation. If we can hone in there, how would you characterize the impact of the hurricanes in participation?
Right. I mean, as you noted earlier, we don't have granular data about that, but I think it's a rational conclusion that the impacts of the hurricanes were devastating. I mean, they were devastating to human life. They were devastating to those communities in the Southeast, but they also are showing up in the jobs report. Having said that, the overall labor force participation rate also remains, it's steady. It's at historic highs. So when we talk about the economy, we have to look at trends. And the trends overall on all major indicators, continue to signal an economy that's very strong. And there is nobody who's reassessing the overall health of the economy based on these numbers, which are really affected by a couple of things that happened last month.
I'd also love for you to go into the impact of the strikes as well. Obviously, the Boeing strike, as well as others, have impacted that manufacturing number, but the Boeing's latest union endorsed the latest offer. Do you expect there to be enough votes to approve the current deal and ultimately end the strike? And on what timeline?
Right, so I've said a lot of times collective bargaining works, and there is no better example of that than when workers at the bargaining table get an unprecedented offer, and where the demands that they've had, they get a chance to sit down at the table and help to shape the future of their jobs, the future of their employer, and the future of their industry. It is true that the tens of thousands of workers being on strike are also one reason for the jobs numbers that we see this month. And the workers will decide. They have been demanding makeup in wages and other working conditions for what's been over a decade of not having them, and so they now have an offer before them. And it was a privilege to help bring the parties together, to help move those talks along, and they'll vote on Monday.
And of course, Labor Secretary, you've of course been involved in ending other strikes. You're involved in these negotiations as well. We're counting down to that vote. What is still at issue here? Because of course, we've had a lot of conversations about wage increases. We know that there's been a lot of daylight between these two sides when it comes to the issues of pensions, for example. What is still left to be resolved right now?
I mean, these issues of retirement security, of benefits, making sure that workers can go to the doctor without breaking the bank, all of these things are fundamental to a good job. And in unions, workers usually have those things. They're not something that every worker gets to enjoy. And so at the bargaining table, all these issues come up. Again, these parties have not bargained for over a decade. And now that they've been able to do that, the workers have been able to surface issues that have been on their minds for a very long time, and they now have an offer that addresses the issues that they brought to the table. And I really need to give credit to both parties for coming to the table, for doing the hard work. These things are never easy. They often take all night. I've been at the table all night. This is the process of collective bargaining. It doesn't always look pretty from the outside, but we have seen the results time and time again, from auto workers to actors, all across the industry, where workers are seeing really historic gains. And that is a part of the picture of the overall economy. President Biden and Vice President Harris have said from day one, we can't build the economy that we want if we don't do right by working people. And the fact that wages continue to be up and wages exceed inflation are signs of that. Working families have more money in their pockets, and that's a good thing.